Lawyers want to become experts at things. It's in their nature to fully understand things. But you can understand why some lawyers then shy away from AI because they see it as so complex that they don't want to go anywhere near it. I think what I would say is get over that.
Minesh Tanna, award-recognized leader in AI law. He advises on responsible AI and risk. In this episode, you'll learn when AI adds speed and how to price outcomes instead of hours.
And we're dealing with a very manual profession that's still very document heavy and still very reliant on the amount of time that people spend in order to value the services. Why would you spend lots of money on a human lawyer to draft a contract when an AI tool is going to do it probably just as well? So that £10,000 hourly rate, if it exists in the future, will be not just based on the experience of being a human lawyer, but will be understanding the technology and how it works and how it's given the edge or provided some certain output. So law firms who are not already embracing AI need to be doing that. That's like going back to the 70s, 80s and 90s and saying, don't use a computer because you're a bit scared about how it works. I mean, how absurd does that sound now?
Law firms are going to hire way more tech people in the future. And they're not going to hire a lot of lawyers anymore, but they're going to hire tech people who build these kind of tools.
I think law firms will look quite different over the next 2 decades.
But I still have the feeling that a lot of lawyers are sleeping on it. No, my position is fine. I will not disappear.
I think there are still lawyers slightly in denial because they haven't taken the plunge of understanding AI properly.
This podcast is brought to you by Legal Mike, the smartest AI assistant built specifically for the Dutch legal practice. Thorough, intuitive, and secure. Want to discover how Legal Mike can boost your practice? Visit legalmike.ai and start today.
Minesh, welcome. It's an honor to have you in the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. I want to start with AI and the impact on legal careers. A few years already, you wrote, I think 2023, that AI will have a massive impact, especially on the career of young lawyers. What do you see like now, 3 years later? What is the impact of AI already on the career of young lawyers?
I think the first thing to say is there's a greater awareness and acceptance that there's going to be a big impact. I think I was always of the view, slightly contrary to folks like Richard Susskind, for example, about how quick this is going to be. I think this is still going to be a very slow-moving change, despite the fact that AI itself is
Very
advancing
quick.
so rapidly. Exactly. I still think the impact on the legal sector is going to be more medium-term, long-term. I mean, someone like Richard would say by 2030, 35, we're going to see an entirely different industry. I think it may be a bit slower than that. And I think there are a few reasons for that I'll come back to in a moment. But there is going to be a massive impact. I think there's already been studies shown, and there was a Goldman Sachs survey, I think, a few years ago saying that the legal profession was one of the most highly likely to be impacted. And it's fairly obvious about it when you think about it. We've got a profession, an industry that has stood in almost a similar position for hundreds of years in some jurisdictions. I mean, you can go to a courtroom in London, in this city, and apart from a few TV screens, it will look very similar to what it did centuries ago.
And we have some laws who are already, I don't know,
As
80
well.
years old.
Right,
We also have that
exactly.
in the Netherlands.
Yes, exactly. And the Netherlands is another good example of a jurisdiction like that as well. And we're dealing with a very manual profession that's still very document heavy and still very reliant on the amount of time that people spend in order to value the services. So when you put all those factors together, document heavy, manual, hasn't changed much for a number of years, it's no surprise that when you get a technology as transformative as something like AI, which has the ability to speed up manual processes significantly, has the ability to reduce costs. I should have said, I think high costs is
We will
another
discuss
feature
that during
of the
this
legal industry.
conversation, yeah.
Right. When you put all those factors in, it's unsurprising that we're going to have such a huge impact of AI on the legal industry. And as I say, I think we're now starting to accept that versus 2 or 3 years ago. I don't think the changes are as radical yet as they will be. It's going to be slow. So in 2 years, I don't think we've seen much change, if at all.
But you say accept it, but I still have the feeling that a lot of lawyers are sleeping on it. And they're like, no, my position is fine. I will not disappear.
I think what that actually speaks to is just a lack of understanding and appreciation of AI. Those that understand and appreciate it, I think, accept that it's going to have a transformative impact. So I think there are still lawyers slightly in denial because they haven't taken the plunge of understanding AI properly.
You understand it. I mean, you're already working on it for more than 10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's been about 10
I think
years.
you're one of the lawyers in the world, maybe, who was the first who really dove into AI quite deep. Is that also something you're pushing here at the firm to young lawyers, to other lawyers? Like, this is a technology you really, really, really need to understand to also be sure that you have a job in the future.
Yeah, massively so. And we were early, as you say. I've been looking at this for 10 years. As a firm, we've been very early to encourage lawyers to take that first step of understanding AI. So now, we have training sessions on it. There's mandatory AI literacy. When you join the firm, you've got to do a training session on it. And it's in everyday life. So we talk about it all the time at the firm, because it's only by understanding it and actually using it do you get to actually fully embrace it, understand the risks and the opportunities, and then be able to deploy it. And, think about when we had computers for the first time. We're probably a bit too old to remember that, but, it would have been absurd when computers came out to not encourage their use, knowing that these are going to revolutionize the world, this industry. So in the same way as computers were probably encouraged early on, we are encouraging the use of AI and encouraging lawyers to use it as much as possible. And we could talk more about the tools that we have in place.
You have some tools here, and we will, of course, discuss it, because that's one of the reasons why I'm here. But one step back, in my discussion with Richard, I also asked him about the training of lawyers during law school, because lawyers are coming here, they have their first year. There was some research, and the research said that there's going to be a lot of work that's going to disappear for young lawyers to also have the experience to work as a lawyer. I mean, for how long you are now a lawyer?
So 15 years almost.
Yeah, and so in the beginning you did different work than you do now.
Yeah.
And that was maybe easier work, things to know, okay, how does it work? How do I do this? How do I do that? That work is maybe going to disappear. So if you're now a young lawyer and you start at this firm or any other firm, how do you have the experience to learn all those things?
Yeah. Look, I don't have the answer to that, but I will confess it's one of two things that keeps me up at night. The other one is slightly more esoteric. It's legal privilege and AI. But the other one is not the work that lawyers will do now. We know that that's going to change. That has changed due to the advent of technology. We can talk about e-discovery, and we've seen this happen in the e-discovery context. So we know that the actual work's going to change, but that point that you've picked up on is the point that keeps me up at night. If you're not doing that work as a junior lawyer, what do senior lawyers of the next generation look like? Because I'm a litigator, so often clients will ask me, what's your instinct about this case? Does it have merits? Is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? When you look at the evidence, what do you think? Is it good evidence? Does it help our case? Does it not? And I often think the reason I'm able to produce quite well-honed instincts on those questions is because I've spent time as a junior lawyer poring over evidence, looking at documents, highlighting late into the night.
You have a good instinct now.
Lever arch, exactly.
But you don't have that instinct when you're coming from law school right away.
What happens when I've done the legal research manually for hundreds of hours as a junior lawyer? So what happens as a junior lawyer when you've not had to do that research, when you've not had to review all that evidence? How do you get those instincts later on in life? And as I say, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect we're going to move to a world where the human edge counts for a lot more. So at the moment, lawyers rely on their human-led instincts and analysis, and that edge is going to become increasingly small, so that the best lawyers are competing at the top for that human margin that is the difference between winning and losing a case potentially.
But it also means that you need different skills as a lawyer,
Yeah.
that you maybe need more human skills, or skills that you, I don't know, maybe cannot teach in law school.
Yeah, I think that's right. So if you think about that human edge, which is going to be a finer margin, so you've got the technology that's doing a lot of work. I mean, you could talk about the technology as well, because that's not going to be uniform across the industry. There'll be
Different technologies,
and
different tools.
technologies,
Yeah.
exactly. So there'll be an edge about what technology you're using, but then that human element there that adds the bit that's the difference between winning and losing a case, for
That
example.
makes you unique also.
Right, and the skills that go into that are going to be very difficult, very finely tuned, honed skills, and that's what I think clients will be paying for.
So this podcast is sponsored by a Dutch legal AI tool called Legal Mike, and they developed a tool for lawyers to do their research way faster. And part of that collaboration is that they always have a question for my guest. And their question for you is, in our interview with Richard Susskind, he suggested that the current phase of AI is primarily about enhancing legal tasks and processes. Looking ahead, however, he anticipates a second phase that will fundamentally reshape our daily lives. And in his view, many of the issues and disputes that today require the involvement of a lawyer no longer reach that stage. Clients will be able to act more autonomously, and problems are likely to be resolved earlier without the need for legal intervention. How do you reflect on that perspective, and also in combination with the questions I just asked you about young lawyers?
I think the first thing I'd say is I agree broadly with Richard, but we won't see a distinct phase 1 and distinct phase 2. And I'm not sure Richard was meaning to say that, but this will be a spectrum, a slow evolution towards what I think Richard is getting at, which I completely agree with. And we will get to a stage where, if you think about litigation currently and how AI is used, it's used to review evidence, to maybe conduct legal research. In 10 years' time, 15 years' time, it will be doing a lot more than that. It will be drafting the submissions. It can do that now, but not as good as humans. It will be drafting the submissions, cross-examining the witnesses. The witnesses may very well be informed by AI. Their statements will be drafted by AI. And eventually it will be recommending solutions for cases. And, one day, and probably in other jurisdictions, deciding on the outcome of those cases as well. So I absolutely think that's going to happen. But as I say, at a slower rate than perhaps others think. And that's going to force lawyers to change how they work, how they operate, what they look at on a daily basis in terms of their work. And then we can unpack that a bit more.
Yeah, but it's going to change
like.
Also their role. So Richard said that the role of lawyers is going to change to also check those tools and check the answers the tools are going to give. And because the answers are earlier already for the clients, they will not be at the lawyer's office anymore, but the lawyers still have a job by checking the content of those tools.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of lawyers, I don't know if they agree and if they think that that's going to be the future, but that will be a totally different job than the job that lawyers have today.
Yeah, and I think an assumption behind that prophecy that humans are going to be checking the work is that we are still needed to check the accuracy, right? That's a today problem. We still have hallucinations in Gen AI tools.
A lot.
We still want humans to be checking. I think in 15 or 20 years, the machines are going to be much smarter than the humans in terms of verification and so on. And actually, you will start to trust the technology to do the verification more than a human. Take the spell check function on a word processor.
Yeah.
You don't want a human reviewing. You want that technology to be doing the verification. So I actually think that the role of lawyers is going to be totally different. It's not going to be limited to checking the AI. There'll just be areas where clients still want human involvement. So it's that edge that I talk about. Where can humans actually add the value? And it could be something like in a family law case to add the empathy side, the experience side, something that I don't think machines will have for a long time. Or it could just be the battle of the minds. In a courtroom, when you sense body language, when you look at in the eye of someone, you can find some reactions,
some emotion.
Which, again, a machine will not be able to do for a long time. So I think it's those really upper level things. I think it's overly basic to say that lawyers will be confined to checking the work of machines, because I don't think that'll be a thing in a few years.
But let's say there's a law firm listening to the show and they don't do anything with AI yet, and they hear your answers and they're like, wow, okay, that's a totally different world than the world we live in today. Where do they need to start to prepare this change? Because you are already working on this for 10 years. You are pushing this within this firm. So I think this firm is one of the firms in the world who is at the forefront of this whole development.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of firms who are way, 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 way behind. Where do we start?
Well, I think what I always say is don't be intimidated by this. Lawyers get intimidated by new areas that are outside of their comfort zone, partly because, and I generalize massively, but lawyers want to become experts at things. They don't like to scratch the surface. It's in their nature to fully understand things. And that's why they get intimidated, because they say, I don't want to just understand the surface level understanding of this area. I want to actually fully understand it.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a great thing. But you can understand why some lawyers then shy away from AI, because they see it as so complex that they don't want to go anywhere near it.
And they try it and it makes one mistake and they're like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to use it anymore.
They're risk averse as well.
Yeah.
I think what I would say is get over that. It's okay to understand the basics of AI, because actually understanding the basics of AI could take you a long way. And to do that, you've got to be using it. So law firms who are not already embracing AI need to be doing that. Again, that's like going back to the 70s, 80s, and 90s and saying, don't use a computer because you're a bit scared about how it works. I mean, how absurd does that sound now? If you were to go back and find a law firm that wasn't using a computer, you would say, get a computer, use it. This is the future. Same with AI. They've got to be embracing it, even if it's just baby steps and not fully immersing yourself in it, not fully understanding it. Start somewhere.
Your firm embraced it in maybe a different way than other firms. You started to build your own system called Percy.
Yes.
Already quite early. Like, I think after the launch of ChatGPT, or maybe already before the launch of ChatGPT, you were working on that system.
Yes.
Why?
We knew this was going to be the future. And it's because we had innovative people in the firm, and I'm one of many. You know, our leadership deserves a lot of credit for realizing early on,
taking risks,
taking risks, but calculated risks, making the investments, knowing that this is going to be the future, trusting the people inside the organization like me who are saying AI is going to be a big thing. And I think, you know, other firms are doing this. We're not alone, but we were early, and that counts for a lot. So we've developed Percy on the basis of GPT. It's a large language model. You can now interact with it like a chatbot, but it's got advanced capabilities now, so you can upload documents, interrogate documents, and it's private, so we don't have confidentiality issues.
I spoke to a lawyer at Simmons in Amsterdam.
Right.
She was very happy with it. She said it's a very interesting system, and it's safe. I feel safe also to upload my documents, because that's something you hear a lot from lawyers. Yep. I'm not going to upload any documents to ChatGPT, which I think is a good thing to not do. Yes. But also to other tools. They're like, no, I'm scared. And with Percy, that's different, because it's a system within the firm.
Yes, it's private, so things remain confidential. And that allows us to do a lot more than if you were just using a publicly accessible free tool for which there aren't the same confidentiality protection. So it's, you know, I think what's most interesting, and this is where, you know, I don't know if you spoke to Richard about this, but the thing that excites me the most is, what tasks is AI going to do that we haven't even thought about yet as humans, right? Because there's thinking about the tasks that we currently do manually that AI is going to do. And Percy's been great for things like translation, for reviewing documents. But I always think AI is going to do things that we haven't even thought of yet as being tasks in the legal industry.
Did you found those things in the last 3 years? I mean, that's a very hard question, but...
Yeah, we're getting there. So I think quite an interesting one is, again, coming back to the litigation context with which I'm familiar, predicting the outcome of cases. Now, obviously, a client will ask me, what do you think? And it's an instinctive response, or we can review past cases.
Because of you had the experience. We talked about it in the beginning.
Yes.
But now you can train a system to maybe have the same kind of instinct.
Exactly. And that's something that humans haven't really done much before. We haven't got the capacity. We can look at old cases, but we can't empirically digest terabytes worth of previous decisions. We can't look at what judges have said in every single case. AI can do that. So we're doing tasks that as humans we haven't thought about doing yet, like accurate predictions about forecasted cases.
How good is the prediction system at this moment?
How do we do it?
How do you score?
Human-led. There are tools out there that
No, but how's Percy doing it?
Oh, how's Percy? Well, we don't use Percy. We could use Percy for that, but again, I think we're still not quite there in terms of the level of technology that's able to do that. There are tools being developed for that, and I think it would give a pretty good response, but I think we're not there yet in terms of very accurate predictions about cases.
How would that change the work of a lawyer if you have a system that can predict the outcome of a case?
Right.
Is it not going to be a bit boring then?
I'm sure it will be quite boring.
I mean, you're a litigator, you're going to court. I think, especially in the beginning, you feel a bit of tension, like, how is this going to be? Yeah. Maybe still, I don't know, with big cases. And then you have a system, and it tells you you're going to win.
Yes, exactly.
Or you're going to lose, and you're going there, and you're like, yeah, okay, I already know the outcome.
Yeah, I think it's going to change a lot, and I think this is what Richard was getting at, which is why it will speed up the court process, because early on... Which is good, of course, absolutely. And AI should be commended for access to justice improvements that it's already facilitated. But yeah, you will go to court with a dispute with the other party, and a very highly sophisticated AI model will be able to tell you have a 30% chance of winning based on all of that extra stuff, which will be more powerful than my instincts one day.
And Percy, you started building it. Where do you start by building a system like that? Is it collecting knowledge from the lawyers who work here? Is it collecting a lot of data? How do you build up a system like this?
Well, we are lucky that we do leverage third-party foundation models, so it's built off GPT. I think the most important thing about our ability to leverage this technology early on was the people we had. So we acquired a legal engineering firm called Wavelength, which you may have heard of 7-8 years ago now, and there were many data scientists and more tech-savvy folks, I would say, with all due respect to our lawyers. They were very technologically sophisticated folks, and they were able then to grapple with the technology very early on. I think where other law firms are perhaps those that have struggled a bit is they've had to recruit in or develop that technological kind of savviness and expertise, whereas we already had it. So that enabled us to, I think, quickly build Percy. And then you're right, we've got internal data, internal know-how that helps as well.
Yeah, so for other law firms, I had a nice conversation about this with the ex-head of legal of ASML.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, law firms are going to hire way more tech people in the future.
Absolutely.
And they're not going to hire a lot of lawyers anymore, but they're going to hire tech people who build these kind of tools.
Yeah.
But you as Simmons and Simmons, you were already doing it.
We've been doing it for a while, but we are acutely aware of exactly that point. I think law firms will look quite different over the next 2 decades.
How is the law firm of, I don't know, in 10 years? What kind of people you have at a law firm? Because I think you will have different kind of people than you have right now.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we will have, unfortunately, fewer lawyers. We will have more technologists. And I think the sad reality is we will have fewer business support services because AI can now start to do quite a few of the tasks that we currently rely on humans for. So we will look more like a tech company with a greater focus on technology and law and fewer business support services that make our company run, of course.
Is this also what you hear from other law firms? That they will look more like a tech company?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, every company. I think it was the head of IBM that said a few years ago that every company will be an AI company in a few years' time. And that's absolutely true.
And then Percy, because other law firms also try to build their own systems, but you also have law firms who say, we will buy a system. We will buy a third-party system which is built by very smart tech people. They have all the law inside. They have all these cool kind of functions inside of this tool. We're not going to spend money on our own system. We buy that system. And we use our data to train that system, and we use it. You can buy, you can blend, or you can build.
Yes.
Which 3 options are interesting for which firm?
It's a really interesting one. And again, something I think about a lot. We've obviously taken the approach here of building more than buying.
Yeah, which is expensive.
It's expensive in a way, although it's not cheap to buy AI tools now. If you look at some of the valuations of some of the big AI tools.
RP is valued more than 1 billion, exactly. I think, at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
So they make some money.
Yes, so it's not cheap to buy as well. I think our philosophy, and I'm speaking personally here, I think this is what has driven it, is the way to get your lawyers really understanding the technology is to get them involved in the process. So with Percy, we have a team of AI champions all across the firm that are responsible in their teams for getting ideas for use cases. And then we will hone those use cases within Percy. So we will help it to do certain tasks. You can only do that when you've got a team that's been familiar with building the tool. They know how it works. They know how to integrate features into it. It's a bit more difficult when you've bought an off-the-shelf solution where you have less flexibility, less creativity. So I think we've been driven very much by wanting our firm to embrace AI. And one way of doing that is to almost get them involved in building the tool and feeling like they're shaping what the tool looks like, which is more difficult when you buy.
In a very early stage, because if you're building it yourself as a firm, your lawyers are involved from, I don't know, day 1, week 1, week 2. And if you buy a tool, the tool is already built and your lawyers need to learn to work with it. They need to get to workshops, etc. So that's a totally different approach.
Absolutely. And if you ask our lawyers, what's the AI tool that we use? They'll all say Percy, they know about it. Whereas we do have other third-party tools that do certain things within the firm, and I may not know about all of them.
And that's okay?
And it might be okay. I should probably know about them. But the thing with Percy is it's grown within the organization. It feels organic. So our lawyers know about it. They're invested in it. They've seen the evolution. They've been responsible for shaping it as well. So I think we get a different dynamic with AI tools when we've built it internally and it's come from there. But don't get me wrong, I think, and I've predicted this for a number of years, there will be what we call general purpose tools like Percy, like Harvey, but we will start, and we already have seen, and we will start to see a lot more specialized tools. And those I think law firms will end up buying because it's not worth the initial investment to build a tool for a specialized task. It's easier just to buy it.
But is that going to work? Because then you have, I don't know, 6 or 7 different tools which you need to learn to work with. It would be way more easier to have one tool that can do everything, right?
Well, it's specialization. Look at Office and Google functions. They don't have just one program, right? They have different applications to do different things. And I think you will have one general purpose tool that can do different things, but then you will start to get specialized tools. They already exist. You look in the real estate sector, there are tools that will do specialist legal tasks that are just designed for that task and that task only.
I have a question from Mark Zijlstra. He's the head of legal technology at ICT Recht in the Netherlands.
My question is, many firms talk about responsible AI, but in practice, the biggest obstacle are often humans and resistance, fear of change, entrenched ways of working. How do you cut through that inertia and ensure AI is implemented responsibly rather than just cosmetically? Really curious. Thanks.
It's a great question. So how do you implement AI responsibly when, as has rightly been flagged, humans are the weak link in the chain, really? And if you think about an obvious example, you can have all the safeguards in the world, all the policies, but all it takes is one human to upload a confidential document to a third-party AI tool which isn't confidential, and suddenly that's a big issue. I will say what I always say. Education is the most important thing. And the concept has emerged recently, partly because of the EU AI Act, AI literacy. Getting people to understand what this technology is, what it isn't, what the opportunities are, but also what the risks are. And I think it starts and almost ends with education. And it's just about how much education you give. Responsible AI is about managing the risks of AI, ensuring that people use it safely. And again, you can implement technical guardrails, you can have policies, but they only work if the people understand them. So it's education, and that's why we have a mandatory AI literacy program at Simmons to make people aware of this. But we are seeing a greater focus on responsible AI. It's a big focus for us, both in terms of how we use AI, but also advising our clients on responsible AI as well. And I could talk for a long time about what it involves, but it is a big area, so it's a great question.
Do you also educate your clients on AI?
We do, yes. I mean, I think because of the revolution that's happening, they are receiving their own education internally. But yeah, I think that's a good point at which I should mention the AI governance offering that we've recently launched in a big way. That's all about designing processes and structures to help organizations manage risk. And as part of that, we do a lot of education. So one example might be we help organizations with drafting their AI policies, which are then going to be rolled out to their staff. So indirectly, we're helping education that way. We've also rolled out our AI literacy program that we implement internally to clients. So quite a few of our clients now use the Simmons AI literacy program as well. So we are helping clients as well. But, you know, they are large organizations. They have their own efforts as well.
No, why I also ask it is because of the business model of law firms. And I had a very interesting conversation with a big company a few months ago, and they had a big legal dispute, and they asked 4 law firms for a quote, and one of those law firms in their quote said, "We use AI," and they got the job. And maybe not only because of they were using AI, maybe also because of other reasons.
Yes,
but it was a thing, and for the client it was very important because the law firm showed to the client, we are innovative, we are trying new things, we can maybe work faster. Is this something you're also communicating to clients? We are using AI, we are at the forefront of the AI revolution in the law world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are doing it partly because we are one of the earliest law firms to use it, and we want to make sure that our clients know about it. But yet we are saying it because clients now expect you to say it. And we did an interesting study. So one of my roles outside of the firm is to chair the City of London Law Society AI Committee. We've recently done an event and some research around what clients are asking law firms about AI. And it's interesting. You see an entire spectrum of approaches. Some clients, and this is still true, will say, do not use AI at all. We don't want you using AI. We pay you for your human knowledge and what goes on in your minds. We want that. Other firms, as in the example you gave, expect their law firms now to use AI because it can generate efficiencies, and they then expect, obviously, those efficiencies to be passed on as well. So I'm not surprised that the company that said they were using, or the law firm that said they were using AI had an advantage there, because that client probably saw the benefits of that, both substantively and in terms of efficiencies. And I think most clients would expect some comment about that now, particularly in large matters where cost can be sensitive, or in matters where there is some commoditization of work, where technology should be able to assist. I mentioned e-discovery. Let me just say a word about that, because when I was a junior lawyer, I used to sit in a room with many other junior lawyers, and we would turn pages in a lever arch folder. You would get to one, you'd move on to the next, you'd carry on doing it, often at unsociable hours. We don't really have that now. We have powerful technological solutions that are able to review documents. There was a case in the English courts, Piro Investments, I think it was 2017, if my memory serves me right, where the English courts actively encouraged the use of technology to speed up that process. And I think in the same way, there's going to be an expectation now to use AI appropriately in the right circumstances to do the same thing.
How do you deal with both of those clients? I mean, on the one side, you have a client who say, don't use AI.
Right.
Start with this one. How do you deal with a client that say, don't use AI? And then, I don't know, if you Google Simmons and Simmons, you find Percy, you find AI, you find your profile working in AI, etc. But you have a client who say, don't use AI.
Well, I mean, my instinct might be say, okay, that's fine. It's going to cost more because there'll be a lot more human time. But it comes back to education again. I think I would probably be saying, why? What are your
ask
concerns?
questions.
Yeah. Can we help with your concerns? Because often the concern might be we're worried about you using our confidential information in a tool that will then digest that. They're worried about the confidentiality aspect of it, understandably. We can then give assurances. Well, that's not the case. And
Also because of your own system.
Because of Percy, for example. And here is where we can help with that. And here's why it might still be advantageous to you. I think actually the harder thing is when clients expect you to use AI.
Yeah, that's the second client.
Right. And we may say, well, that might not be appropriate in the ways that you consider that you want us to use it. And we have to be careful about that because responsible AI has got to be at the core of everything we do. So that can often be a more difficult conversation.
So those clients maybe give you suggestions how to use AI, or they come with their own answers already with AI and send it to you like, okay, now you can save 10 hours because we already did the prep.
Well, that is happening here already.
How do you deal with that as a lawyer? I mean, I spoke to a lot of lawyers in Amsterdam. They have the same at big law firms, and they have big clients, and those clients are sending in documents
we've
already prepared with AI, and they're like, okay, now you can do your work in 50% of the time because I already did 50% of it, and you need to check everything and then see, oh yeah, but I don't know if it's correct.
Right.
That's hard.
It is hard. And there's going to have to be a lot more communication between law firms and clients to deal with situations like that. I could completely understand why clients are doing that. Why would you spend lots of money on a human lawyer to draft a contract when an AI tool is going to do it probably just as well? But then, you know, a lot of using lawyers is about risk management, right? It's transferring the risk to a third party and then, you know, insurance would cover it if anything goes wrong. It's transferring risk. So you still want to transfer the risk outside of the organization by saying, now you as the law firm, I want you to check.
That's why lawyers are expensive.
Right, exactly. It's a risk allocation thing. So I can understand why a client would then say, right, we want to still allocate the risk outside of my organization, so I'll get a lawyer externally to check that this is right. That's when, and this is the heart of responsible AI, lawyers have got to think, hold on, am I able to verify this? Do I actually just have to do the work again? If it's a legal research question, probably. You can't sign off on an answer without doing some research yourself. So that's when I think you have to have transparency, communication with the client and say, well, look, I can't just tick the box here and say this is right. I've got to do the work myself. Let's work out how we can still make this efficient for you.
But do you agree with me that the business model of law firms is going to change with AI?
Yes.
I mean, we now have a business model, most law firms, an hourly fee.
Yes.
And you write down your hours, and at the end of the project, you send your invoice and the hours get paid.
Yes.
That will change.
It will. It will. I'll still come back to what I said at the beginning, which I think it will be slower than we think, partly because familiarity is a lot more powerful than we think. There's something called status quo bias. We are hostile to change, particularly where we're dealing with an industry where truth and accuracy is paramount. So
Is we humans or lawyers?
we humans and we probably clients who are looking to external law firms for support. I think the rate of change will be slower than we think because we're just so familiar to what has been done for hundreds of years. But inevitably, right? Because we're now moving away from a world where we value how much time has been spent to produce an output, and it's much more on the output that's been produced. And that's a lot more consistent with what happens in society generally, right? We value things based on the output, not the process that went into it. So I do think it's inevitable now that when something can produce the same output or nearly the same output with much less time, the focus will start to shift on how much do I now value the output rather than the time that went into it. So yes.
There was a research that 58% of firms, and I think this was in the US, expect less billable hour work within 5 years and want to start to experiment with things like fixed fees, subscriptions, or success fees.
Yes.
I mean, totally new business models.
Totally new business models.
And then you also need to change the way your law firm works because your whole law firm is based on an hourly fee.
Yes.
And then out of nowhere, you have a fixed fee or you have a fee for the output.
Yes.
How will you prepare lawyers for a change like that?
Look, I will say again that I think this is going to be slower and more gradual than people think. And this isn't new. Go back to e-discovery. We used to charge for those 15 lawyers sat in a room reviewing documents manually. We used to charge on an hourly basis.
Which also sounds like a nice community, by the way.
It was nice. It was, yeah, you safety
you
in
order
numbers.
some pizzas and you're
exactly.
doing e-discovery the whole night and you're bonding with each other.
And you're developing those skills that'll turn you into a successful lawyer one day. That was on an hourly basis. Now we have had to now charge based on the technology we use. So the model's changed already, right? This isn't new and it will be gradual. So I think the worry is when people talk about models changing is they think that within a year or two, law firms are going to turn upside down and there's going to be an entirely different business model. It's not going to be like that. It will be a gradual change. But yes, it will look different in 10 or 20 years' time, and it will look fundamentally different. But the way that will come about will be more organic, will be more gradual, I think, and that will mean it will be less significant than I think or dramatic than people are thinking it will at the moment.
Can you share your vision on how it will look in 10 years? Business model side. What will we have in 10 years?
I think we will have, as I say, lawyers who are actually more technologists. It will be more about which tools to use to get the best outcome. And it will be, if we give a couple of examples here, in a transactional context, which AI tool gives you the best contract negotiation and the best playbook for dealing with the other side's negotiations. And you might have AI tools doing the first round of negotiations against each other, and then that human edge will come into it. Which way can you tip the balance with the humans then involved? On the litigation side, there will be AI tools drafting the submissions, analyzing the evidence, probably suggesting an outcome, and then there'll be lawyers coming together to provide that human edge to try and get a slightly more favorable outcome than the AI tool is suggesting. So this will be a lot more about lawyers using AI tools and then leveraging the outputs to gain and deliver the services they need for their clients rather than doing all of the work to start with. So if you imagine a process going from 0 to 10 for what a human lawyer does now, and technology might help with steps 0 to 3, and then the rest is humans, I think you will get technology doing steps 0 to 6, and then the humans take over. Will it mean fewer lawyers are required? Probably, because you only have now fewer steps. But actually, the value placed on those humans doing steps 7 to 10 will be higher, and you will still be, I think, wanting the best lawyers to do those steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it was the CEO of LexisNexis who said in 10 years, lawyers will have an hourly fee of $10,000.
Right, exactly.
That's exactly the part you just described. I mean, from 0 to 6, you have the computer, but to go from 6 to 10, you need very, very, very good people.
Yes.
And those people are expensive and they know how AI works, but they also know exactly how the law works and where maybe the AI took a left turn, where the AI needed to take a right turn.
Yeah.
And that saves the client a lot of money and time. And that's why they get more expensive. and not cheaper.
Exactly. I think that's absolutely right. So that £10,000 hourly rate, if it exists in the future, will be not just based on the experience of being a human lawyer, but will be understanding the technology and how it works and how it's given the edge or provided some certain output. And as you say, knowing when it's turned left instead of right. Completely agree.
If we swing back to the clients, we just talked about two kinds of clients. You have a client who say, I want you to use AI, and you have a client who say, I don't want you to use AI. The client who say, I want you to use AI in combination with the business model we just talked about, they also say, yeah, you can do your work more efficient. You can do it faster. You can maybe do it better. Do you already have some hard discussions with those clients about invoices, about payments, about the price? Is it already happening now?
Well, I think we tried to have the conversation at an earlier stage before we get to that. But ostensibly, yes, we are having discussions with clients who understandably have pressure from within their own organization to be reducing legal costs, and those pressures get passed on to their external lawyers, of course. It comes down to appropriate use, responsible use, making sure that everyone's on the same page about how they want AI to be used and that they're aware of the downsides of doing so, because it isn't just upsides, right? And we are still dealing with a technology which, although incredibly powerful, fast-moving, still has weaknesses.
I mean, we're mainly talking about the upsides, but there are a lot of downsides.
There are
also,
downsides, yeah,
which are not
absolutely.
perfect yet.
Absolutely. If you look at the latest GPT-5 model that's come out,
great.
It's not perfect, is it? I mean,
I liked 4 more.
right? Yeah, lots of people are saying that. But this is another thing I always say. We do expect a lot from machines, and if it's not 100% perfect, we're very critical of it. And I don't think that's the case. But it is about ensuring that everyone is aware of the downsides, the bits where humans can really add value. I think sometimes it can be easy to think, oh, AI reduces costs, therefore you should use it, and therefore the cost should be lower.
How do you communicate the downsides to clients? What is your way of doing it?
Well, I think every case is different. It depends on exactly what legal services are being requested, because the nuances can vary. Let's say it's a very straightforward form that needs to be filled out on a real estate transaction, for example. There, AI could do a very good job, but you would have to make the client aware of potential hallucinations, for example, that could change how a particular box is filled out in the form. Whereas if a client said, I want to use AI for reviewing evidence, there are different considerations there. You know, it might be that we might not pick the most accurate or reliable evidence. How much human review do you want on top of the machine-led job? So the weaknesses depend on the context, but I think it's just important that we have those discussions and we don't just get told.
Interesting discussions,
use AI.
I think.
They are interesting discussions.
I mean, those are interesting conversations that you have with clients that you maybe didn't have before.
Yes, absolutely.
Which makes your work also different.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, it's not humans alone anymore. It's also machines, but that's not new. We have been there before.
If you look at the risks, there are a few risks that are important for law firms, and which I also hear from law firms. One of them is bias and discrimination. The other one is data privacy. And of course, you have the hallucinations.
Yes.
I mean, lawyers who work with these systems, and we talked about this in the beginning, they use it. They try it once. They see a mistake and they're like, I'm not going to use it anymore. I mean, this was an experiment, done. I stop using it. For me, that's so risk averse that I think then it's so hard as a lawyer to take a next step in this whole technology and to learn this technology. So how should those lawyers deal with that? Yeah, the software is not perfect yet. How should they deal with it?
I mean, I completely agree. It's short-sighted and far too risk-averse to abandon the technology just because it displays one mistake or one inaccuracy. You don't abandon your junior lawyers when they make a mistake. It's a part of the learning process. And the same with AI, right? This comes down to, again, to education, understanding that AI is not going to be perfect. It's not suited to all circumstances. And we hear stories all the time about how certain AI uses have gone wrong. And my first reaction is, well, it's not supposed to be perfect for that scenario that you used it for. And this is where I do think specialized tools coming in will help.
That's an important
the
point.
position. Yeah. because you can use these general purpose tools for lots of different things, but they're not designed to be perfect for every single
You can
purpose.
use ChatGPT in a certain way and
Right.
get garbage in and garbage out.
Of course, it's not
But you
designed.
can also use it in another way, and then you have amazing answers.
Right, in the same way that humans specialize in certain fields, and you wouldn't use a lawyer to go and perform medical surgery. So I think it's important that you are using these tools in the right way with the appreciation of the risks in that particular use case or purpose.
And then we're back at education.
We're back at education, of course, and then knowing that it might not be perfect. But I do think we shouldn't hold out machines to be perfect, because we'll never fully embrace it if that's the case.
One of the last topics I want to discuss with you are AI agents. I mean, that's a new level. We're now talking about mainly generative AI.
Yeah.
AI where you are behind the screen, you are giving some assignments to the AI. But there's a new level of AI already in development, and people are using it already for, I don't know, building websites, writing code. And those are AIs that can do work without a human behind the screen.
Yes.
And I think Harvey was one of the first tools who rolled out an AI agent inside of their system.
Yes.
But that's going to change also a lot. That's going to add like a new level of complexity to this whole discussion we're having right now.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, the first thing I would say is, and I've made this prediction quite a few years in the past, which is going to be the hot topic for the next year. And I said agentic AI agents would be the 2025 topic. And I think
you were right.
That's right. Yeah, I said Gen AI was 2024.
2026.
Yeah. I think I won't quote that yet. I normally wait until near the end of the year. I've got a few ideas, but let's
Send them to me, okay?
Yeah, I will do. I still think AI agents will be quite prominent, but the terminology is such a fascinating concept. How we think about this as humans and the labels we put. Because what I will say is there's a misconception about agentic AI and what AI agents do in inverted commas, because it's very easy to attribute the label to it, but it might not actually be displaying the behaviors that we would typically, from a technological perspective, associate with agentic AI, which means more autonomy to be able to achieve a goal set by a human without necessarily always coming back to the human for response and feedback and then the next action. So it's more like telling an AI system to go and book a travel ticket without then the system needing to come back to the human for help on which steps to take. So it's autonomously completing a task. Yes, absolutely, they are going to create more opportunities, but certainly more risks. And I think the risk that's becoming increasingly apparent in the AI world is transparency, understanding what's actually going on, because it's very easy to get carried away. You see all these systems doing powerful things, you're like, I'll rely on them, and they'll go ahead and do it very well.
You have no idea how they work.
And there's very little idea about how exactly they're operating behind the scenes. And I think for lawyers, that's particularly important, because we need to know what data is being ingested, not just for data privacy and bias reasons, as you rightly flag, but just for accuracy and
Also
reliability.
How we are schooled.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's, for me, the greatest risk with that technology moving fast in a legal context, is that we start to lose sight of what's happening. Again, and this is going to become a boring theme now, but education, right? You've got to know what's going on with the tools before you start using them, how they operate, what they're doing, what steps they're taking, what data they're ingesting. We'll never fully understand how these tools operate, but having a good understanding is, I think, a really important risk mitigation point.
Do you think it would be interesting to make sure that we could have AI liable for mistakes they make?
It's fascinating. I've talked about legal personality for AI, and often
we now have rivers in the world. They have
exactly.
legal personality.
Yeah, and people often think of like a robot standing up in a courtroom and being sentenced to some punishment for a crime, but it's not like that at all. It's not that dissimilar to how companies have corporate personality. So as a company, you can be fined, and I can imagine a system where this is getting a little bit deep quite quickly.
That's good. We're at the end, so people understand where we're going.
It's not as drastic as robots having sort of physical personality in that sense. And it's more practical and boring. It's an autonomous vehicle maybe having a pot of money associated with it. When it causes an accident, money is then paid out to victims. When it drives safely, it receives more money. So it's a bit boring like that. But I do think that is almost giving agency and legal personality to AI. And I do think that's going to become increasingly talked about in years to come. But it's less dramatic and more
but
boring.
it's an important discussion to start early on and don't start this discussion in 10 years
Yes,
when we are too late.
I think so.
I think we already have people who also with self-driving cars.
Yes.
Like, should we make them liable for if they make a mistake, or if they, I don't know, ride into someone?
Yes.
And I think that's the same with AI. We should
Absolutely,
have
yeah.
this discussion already now.
I think so. And look, I don't know how AI is going to develop in the next decade. It's uncertain, powerful. We talk about general artificial intelligence, but I think this idea of we already have reinforcement learning as a way of training machines. I do think that element is going to become more and more important as machines get smarter. And I do think then the idea of giving them their own agency and personality is going to be inevitable at some point if we're grappling with that idea.
We talked about Percy, we talked about Simmons, we talked about your role in the whole AI world. As a closing question, if you had to make one concrete promise to every client about how Simmons will handle AI in the legal world, what would it be in the next years?
I think it would be that we will always try to do it as appropriately as possible. And I think that's not a very exciting finalizing word on this podcast, but I think we will always try to do it in the right way. And that means being transparent and being honest. If we don't think it's the right tool to use, we're not going to use it for the sake of doing it. Equally, if it's the right tool, we will proactively suggest it and try and do it to make our services as best as they can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Legal AI Lab, with many thanks to my guest, Minesh Tanna. Follow and subscribe in your podcast app, leave a review and share this episode. There are many more conversations coming with leaders from the legal AI world. I'm Hidde Bruinsma. See you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Legal Mike, the smartest AI assistant build specifically for the Dutch legal practice. Thorough, intuitive, and secure. Want to discover how Legal Mike can boost your practice? Visit legalmike.ai and start today.